time is currently 11:34 p.m. and I've been trying to film this video for 2 weeks. And since the kids are asleep, I figure why not now? So it's just me and you and Olive, unless she gets too crazy, because then I'm gonna put her in my room. Don't worry, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
A few moments later.
Relax. You gotta chill out. I'm gonna have to put you away. Can you chill? I don't know if it's gonna happen. She might have to get kicked out of here. Okay, say bye-bye. Bye-bye. Wednesday, May 7th, 2014. Carl Patrick, a Miami police officer, does not show up for his shift. His supervisor, concerned, calls his phone to see where he is. His girlfriend, Tiniko Thompson, answers his phone. She lets the supervisor know that they are on the way to the hospital. The supervisor doesn't think anything is odd about this because Taniko is pregnant. So the supervisor assumes they're on the way to labor and delivery to have their baby. The supervisor wants to speak to Carl, but Taniko hangs up. Pretty weird, right? The supervisor kind of shrugs it off, just assumes they got disconnected, calls back. Taniko answers a second time. The supervisor wants to speak to Carl again. Taniko lets them know they're at the hospital and he's just left the room, but he'll call them back later, and hangs up again. It seems like she's acting weird, but the woman's in labor. She can act weird if she wants. Well, 2 days go by and no one hears from Carl. No one hears from Taniko. No one sees any cute pictures of a baby. And coworkers and supervisors begin to grow more concerned. They dispatch police officers over to Tiniko and Carl's home to do a well check on them. They live in the city of Pembroke Pines. Officers knock on the door and get no response. So they decide to break down the door. When they enter the home, they find Carl dead in the master bedroom. So, what the heck happened? Well, we're going to need to rewind back a little bit to when Taniko and Carl first met. They first met at the Miami Police Department, where Carl, of course, was working there as an officer. Taniko had started a job as a public service aide. The pair met and sparks flew and they started to date. Shortly after they started to date, Taniko told Carl that she was pregnant with his child. At this point in time, Taniko was struggling financially and her car had just been repossessed. Things were hard. So Carl, hearing that she's pregnant with his child, asks her to move in with him so that he can take care of them both. Soon, Taniko's driving his car and racking up charges on his credit cards. She told people that she was pregnant for months and was on a leave of absence from work. Friends testified that she sent them pictures of her growing belly and was planning to name the baby Victoria. There are a few problems with this whole situation. The first one being, Tiniko Thompson had a full hysterectomy and she could not have any more children. The second issue was Carl himself had struggled with infertility problems of his own, so it was very unlikely that he would father a child for anyone. And now comes the craziest part of all. Taniko claimed to be pregnant for 13 months. No, you didn't mishear me. 13 months. As you can probably imagine, Carl's family and friends and coworkers saw numerous red flags about this relationship, and Carl's mom specifically pleaded with him several times to break things off with Tiniko. She did not think that she was a good match for her son. She did not trust her. She thought she was weird and shady. In fact, there were a few times that Tiniko tried to get her mother-in-law to feel her stomach when the baby was kicking or moving, and Carl's mother put her hand on her stomach, but she didn't feel anything. And she let Tiniko know that she did not feel anything. But Carl believed that Tiniko was carrying his child, and he stuck by her side and continued their relationship, despite concerns from his loved ones. That was until he saw the debt she had accumulated on his credit cards. And when he confronted her about it and she continued to be dishonest, even with a mountain of evidence against her, that is the straw that broke the camel's back. Or so investigators have come to assume, since sadly, Carl is no longer here to defend himself or give his side of the story. Here is what police presented as a timeline of events based off of what they could prove factually with the evidence that they gathered. On Wednesday, May 7th, an altercation occurred between Tiniko and Carl, which unfortunately left him dead from a gunshot wound. We'll get to Tiniko's version of events and what the investigation alleges occurred later on. When the altercation was over, Tiniko took her phone and Carl's phone with her as she left the house, which is when she answered the calls from the concerned supervisors and never once mentioned the altercation. She then drove Carl's car, a BMW, to a self-storage facility in North Miami, arriving at about 8:45 a.m. For about 4 hours, you can see her calmly moving items in and out of the storage unit. These items included documents, women's clothing, and items for a newborn baby. Thursday, May 8th, the next day, surveillance footage shows Tiniko return to the storage unit again at about 3:13 p.m. and was only there for a few minutes. Friday, May 9th, police have a parking receipt that shows Tiniko at Bella Vista Park in North Miami around 8:56 a.m. Later that afternoon, Tiniko's mother, Ann Brady, called police. This was because she was concerned about her daughter's safety because she was threatening to take her own life. Witnesses told police that they saw Tiniko arrive at her mother's home in Opa-locka around 3 p.m. Opa-locka police officers were dispatched to her mother's home. And around the same time, the officers in Pembroke Pines were dispatched to Carl's home that he shared with Tiniko. His Miami police cruiser was in the front driveway, and that's when police officers discovered that he hadn't been to work in 3 days. Which of course brings us back to them breaking down the door and discovering his body. According to the crime scene report, officers knocked and waited for an answer, and when they didn't get one, they broke in, as we know. When they entered the home, they went to the master bedroom and there was blood on the doorway. There was also blood on the bathroom doorway. Inside the master bedroom, they found a man's body and a semi-automatic firearm. The man was on his back on a tiled floor, and there was blood all around him. His body was between the bed and the wall, which also had blood marks. The body was wrapped in sheets and the comforter from the bed. It also appeared to have burn marks. It looked as though something was placed on top that had been set on fire. He wasn't wearing shoes and the comforter did not cover his feet, and he was missing one sock. When police removed the bedding, they saw that he was wearing his Miami Police Department uniform and that he had suffered a gunshot wound. A note was found on the kitchen table that read, "It was an accident. We had a fight." So let's talk about what Taniko's version of events is. According to Tiniko, Carl confronted her about the credit card charges, but she alleges that he wanted to continue their relationship and work things out. So she was pretty shocked to wake up the following morning with his gun in her mouth. She claims that they struggled over the gun, and during that altercation, the gun went off, leaving him shot. She then wrapped him in the bedding, grabbed her phone, went to the kitchen, wrote that note, heard Carl's phone ringing, went back to pick it up, and fled the scene. From the evidence the police gathered, here is what they believe happened. They believe that Tuesday evening, Carl confronted Tiniko not about the credit card charges. They believe that had already come up. But what they feel they had actually argued about this instance was the pregnancy. Carl had confronted Tiniko with a pregnancy test and asked her to take it so she could prove she was pregnant, and Tiniko refused. And that became a very long and very heated argument that went over into the next day as well. And the police believe that this argument led to an altercation that ended with somehow getting control of Carl's firearm and shooting him. And then she wrapped him in the bedding, grabbed her phone, wrote the note, heard his phone ringing, grabbed his phone, and fled the scene. So there's just a tiny bit they agree on there. According to the medical examiner, the bullet entered Carl's right inner bicep and it pierced through the back of the arm in the shoulder area. His body had been pressed against a hard surface when this occurred. The medical examiner also confirmed that this was a wound that Carl could have survived if help had been on the way. So the obvious reaction here is suspicion, because Taniko didn't call for help and she didn't even mention anything was amiss with the phone calls she received from Carl's supervisors. She had a lot of opportunities to get him help, and if it was truly a struggle that led to an accidental shooting, then why wouldn't she have called for help? Of course, following this, the police wanted to get in contact with her ASAP, but she was able to evade them for quite some time, which is incredibly suspicious behavior of someone who claims to be innocent. When they were finally able to get her down to the station for questioning, she actually said she would not answer any questions without her attorney present. But as soon as she got into the interrogation room, she wouldn't stop talking.
But this time he was some monster. He was something different. I had no control over that. But I know if somebody get ready to do this thing, at some point it's going to be either, what can I do? And that on Tuesday, we got up. We were together. We made love and everything like nothing. He said, we call it the truth. We'll pay it once you get all your money. We just pay it down on the credit card. That was it. That's the God on the
I thought your attorney said that you tried having sex with him, but he didn't want to have nothing to do with you. That's what your attorney said.
I'm talking about the morning of Tuesday. The evening of Tuesday.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I would have been scrutinized a long time ago.
You were scrutinized a long time ago.
Oh, well, I don't care because I never talked to those people. So whatever he did, and according, theoretically speaking, there was another female that said that she was pregnant from him and showed him an ultrasound and said that she aborted the baby. So.
Okay. What are we going to do here, Tiniko? Because you keep going back and forth about the attorney thing, and we're starting to talk about things. So you need to decide whether we're going to sit down and talk and go through this, and it could be a long time, or if you just want to try to contact him when you get to the jail, or when you get to the hospital, wherever you're going.
This is what we learned about Taniko's side of the story from this interrogation. Tiniko said she was afraid to call the police because she was a woman of color and she thought that she would be in danger if she called and asked for help from police officers.
When I see this thing happen and show it on the news, or somebody get into it with a cop, or they shoot a cop, or whether it's accident or whatever, they always massacre the person. They do.
9 years you worked at that police department.
9 years.
How many incidents of that have you seen that?
I've never seen that because
that's
I've never been on.
You're starting to worry me about your mental health right now.
I've been a police public service aide. I worked in property. I worked in personnel. I worked for the chief's office. I never encountered anything bad, but I hear how they say I've overheard officers say how they beat the person before they got to where they gotta go. I've heard that. That's the truth.
I'm obviously not a person of color, and I'm not going to invalidate anyone's fears or experiences. However, it does seem like a strange feeling to have in this circumstance, but again, not invalidating anyone's experiences. She also said that Carl himself also had a fear of police officers. This is when she told the officers that Carl wasn't upset about the credit card debt. Well, so he was upset, but in her words, it wasn't that he wanted to end their relationship. He just wanted her to pay back the debts and for them to work through it together as a couple. That's what she says.
Was he trying to get you out of the house?
No. If he was trying to get me out the house when we had the argument about the credit card and everything, he could have told me, you need to leave. Pack your shit and leave. He never said that to me.
He didn't tell you that? He didn't threaten and say he was going to go to IA over you and tell him you were doing stuff with the credit card you weren't supposed to do?
He never told me that. My right hand to Jesus, he never told me that. He never told me that. He said, we going to have to straighten this out.
Which, again, according to her, waking up with a gun in your mouth was a very shocking thing given the conversation the night before.
God, why, Lord, why did I just go? Why did I just take that? I'm a person that try to de-escalate things. I never try to cause problems. I'm the person that tries to keep everything calm. So if he fuss, I don't fuss back with him. I wait till he calm down and be sweet. He'll go to the other room, and that's fine. I go in the other room, and that's that, and we go on.
So what do you mean by did that? You mean point the gun at you?
I was trying to come to my face like that and grab me in my mouth, and we start fighting. I start struggling with the gun. What am I supposed to do? I couldn't reach to no cell phone because we had him on the phone all the way on the other side. I wasn't supposed to get to it. He wasn't trying to get to it. He's trying to fight me. It's going to haunt me for the rest of my life. It's going to bother me for the rest of my life. You hear me? It's going to bother me the rest of my life. Oh, man. Oh, my God. Oh,
A man what?
A man who I loved. I would do anything in the world for.
She told the officers that it was accidental and that she was just fighting for her life.
I could have been. It could have been the other way around. God knows. I wish it would have never been that way. I wish it would have never happened, period. But it happened. I can't take it back. I can't change it. I can't change any of my actions at that time and how I felt. I can't change that. All I know is I fought for my life. And that's what I did. And now I don't even have a
fought
bill.
for your life? Is that what you were saying?
Yes, I fought for my life.
I didn't understand what you were saying there.
She brought up with the officers how Carl had infertility issues, and she said he convinced her to fake the pregnancy because they were looking to adopt a child and he didn't want people to know he had infertility issues. So naturally, she would need to fake a pregnancy so that when they show up with a baby, people assume it's his biological child.
So were you guys actually trying to adopt him? Was there paperwork filed and everything?
When they get ready to when he had the time off, it'll be a different story. And I look at him, I say,
So the only way I can verify that, I can't verify that, that's just you saying that you were trying to adopt? So whose idea was it to say you were pregnant like a year ago? It was about a year ago when you started telling people you were pregnant. Whose idea was it back then?
Both of ours.
Okay. And that was because you guys were trying to have a baby or because you were going to adopt a baby way back then?
I just told you, he can't have babies.
But what was the idea a year ago? I don't understand. Why wouldn't you guys just say you were going to adopt?
Because he didn't want me to do it. He didn't want nobody to know that he had this issue around the job. He had a thing where he was this perfect man.
But the reality is, everyone knew Carl had infertility issues. It wasn't a secret. He was pretty open about it. So this statement contradicted everyone else's statements they made about Carl to the police. Friends, family, coworkers, they all knew about his struggles with infertility.
Do you know I've talked to several of his coworkers and they all knew that?
Well, I don't know what they knew, but he didn't tell me that. He told me he didn't want them to know. Okay? He told me this. I'm telling you, he could tell them what he want, but when he's at home and talking to me, it was a different story.
She said numerous times during the interview that she was mad because they weren't talking to people on her side, they were only talking to people on Carl's side, and if they talked to people who knew her and were there for her, had her back, that they would understand the situation and that this was accidental, and she was just defending herself. And this was because she claimed that Carl was horribly abusive, that they had like a terrible relationship. This was all behind closed doors and no one knew about it except for certain trusted friends. And she talked about how she had this friend and she had told him that if anything happens to her, that he needs to tell police the true story so that they know what happened. And the police officer interrogating her asked, "Oh, really? What's this friend's name?" She danced around it for several minutes and she finally said his name is Daniel Jackson.
Daniel Jackson?
Yes.
I spoke to him.
Yeah.
Never said any of that.
Wow.
He said he called and actually spoke to you Wednesday, and you told him you were
In pain.
Yeah.
I told him I was in a lot of pain. That's right. I was in a lot of pain.
And he thought you were.
I'm in labor.
And he said you were in labor. He thought you were in labor because you were breathing like a pregnant woman does when she gives birth.
Yeah.
Yep.
I told him if anything happened to me, Jack, because Carl asked me, but I told him how one day he came home and he snapped on me, and I told Jack, I said, Jack, can you believe? He just, if anything happened to me, Jack, just tell the truth.
Okay. Well, how would he tell the truth? Was he there?
No,
You mean tell the truth meaning he told you that? You told him that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, he didn't tell me any of that.
Okay.
I actually took a sworn tape statement from him.
And the officer said, in fact, everyone we have spoken to who knows the two of you said that you had a very loving, good relationship, that Carl had your back, that he supported you 100%. No one said anything about any secret conversations they had with you about the state of your relationship behind closed doors. All anyone ever heard about Carl from you was that he was great. Pretty much every time Taniko said anything about Carl that questioned his character or what he was like as a partner, she was pretty quickly shot down by the testimonies police had received and witness statements from other people that usually directly conflicted with what she said. And as soon as they would do this, she would backpedal and she would switch her story around. And it's just really sad because it's her word against Carl's, and Carl's not alive to defend himself. So we're really not getting Carl's side, are we? She maintained over and over again throughout all the interviews that she woke up with the gun in her mouth, they struggled over it, and the gun went off accidentally. She did not mean to shoot Carl. It was an accident. She would never do that, and he attacked her first. She maintained this for a very long time. But she backpedaled again when her attorney requested to have a trial to get her case dismissed under the stand your ground law. And Taniko now admitted to shooting Carl in self-defense. The stand your ground law. The law introduced two conclusive presumptions that favor a criminal defendant who is making a self-defense claim. Number one, the presumption that the defendant had a reasonable fear that deadly force was necessary. And two, the presumption that the intruder intended to commit an unlawful act involving force or violence. These two presumptions protect the defender from both civil and criminal prosecution for the unlawful use of deadly or non-deadly force in self-defense. In addition, the defender/gun owner has no duty to retreat, regardless of where they are attacked. So as long as they are in a place where they are lawfully entitled to be when the danger occurs. Basically, the law allows for those who feel a reasonable threat of death or bodily injury to meet force with force. The judge at this trial, his name is Jeffrey Cohen, rejected the motion. He rejected the motion after hearing Taniko's testimony and others, because what she said happened conflicted completely with the forensic evidence the prosecution had gathered.
He kept turning the gun towards me, and I kept turning the gun towards him. And at that time, he slipped. His left foot slipped, and his hand went up off the gun. And I held onto the gun and I fired a shot.
There's a loaded gun right next to the man who's allegedly trying to murder her, but she's gonna take the time to stamp out some smoldering sage and then step over him, and then she goes 3 feet away to the bathroom and stands in the bathroom, washes her hands, changes her clothes, while this man is laying there.
Medical examiner Rebecca McDougall said Carl was lying on his back when he was fatally shot. Tiniko said that Carl was kneeling face to face with her when he was shot.
The motion for determination of immunity from prosecution and motion to dismiss are denied.
She seems so inconvenienced. Her facial expressions are next level. I just watched hours and hours of newscasts and clips from the trials and the interviews, and I was just mesmerized by her reactions to things and the way she explains things. I think that she thought that there was no way that she would be convicted at all. And so because Judge Cohen rejected the motion, they moved on to the trial. The trial took place in August 2016.
The evidence is going to show you that morning the defendant explodes. Tiniko Thompson explodes. Tiniko Thompson is not going to be exposed for this giant web of deceit, for this fake pregnancy, for the lies to everyone. She's not going to be exposed to the City of Miami Police Department for being out on FMLA when she's not even pregnant. It's not going to be exposed.
I felt that God maybe work a miracle for my son. He was a good son. She sat down and she said to me, Miss Patrick, come and feel this. Come and feel this. The baby is jumping.
And what did she have you do?
And I went and I touched her stomach, put my hand around her, and I said to her, I don't feel nothing. I can't believe this, really. I can't believe this.
Is it a wound that is survivable if medical attention is received quickly for it?
If you tourniquet it and you don't lose a lot of blood, I believe it's a survivable injury, yes.
Can he get up and walk around?
He can get up and walk around.
He could walk to a bathroom and get help, towels, anything to help put pressure on his wound.
Correct.
Unless something or someone prevented him from doing so?
He could have gotten up.
So the big bombshell piece of evidence in the case was the prosecution showed that the forensic evidence proved that there was absolutely no saliva on the barrel of the gun. No saliva. And there were fingerprints and stuff like all over it, but no saliva. Kind of hard to prove your story of having a gun shoved in your mouth when your saliva's not on the gun. This evidence, along with countless character witnesses on behalf of Carl, really had an effect on the jury. They took less than 2 hours to deliberate, and they found Tiniko Thompson guilty of second-degree murder.
The defendant will be remanded to the custody of the Department of Corrections for her natural life.
My Lord is giving justice today because my son was good to that lady and he loved her so much that he could not see the ugly in her.
For him to die the way he did, it was she needed to pay the ultimate price.
I'm sorry in my own self-defense that Carl lost his life with Patrick. I truly loved Carl, but I didn't mean for Carl to die. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you lost him.
He was not going to kill her. She didn't have to know self-defense. I saw my son's face on the floor.
So this probably won't be a shock to you, but I don't think she's innocent. I do think it was second degree. I don't think it was premeditated. I don't think she wanted to kill Carl, but I do strongly believe that she saw that the jig was up and that this relationship was going to be over, and she panicked and she killed him to try to save face and cover up the whole thing. In the short window of time between when she was released from jail to try to get ready for the trial to get the case dismissed, she tried to claim that she had had a miscarriage because of the struggle and all the stress from the fallout of the altercation, but she was never pregnant. Never pregnant. Full hysterectomy. Completely fabricated. But yet she still tried to save face. It's crazy. It just blows my mind. Also, the forensic evidence, not finding any saliva, but finding other evidence like fingerprints, smudge marks, residue, etc. I mean, she stuck to that first part of her story forever. She said, he put the gun in my mouth. I woke up with the gun in my mouth. The gun was in my mouth. Every version of the story she told, the gun was in her mouth. There's no saliva. Sure, playing devil's advocate, maybe it could have been in her mouth and there was no saliva left on it. But that would be so hard to do. Anyway, you know what my opinion is, but I am sure there are plenty of people who disagree with me or think otherwise, and I'd love to hear your opinions. So drop me a comment, let me know.